Evening, everybody. So we are happy to see you again on our English Without Borders webinar series, which have started last week, and this week we are going to continue with our wonderful speakers. So today we are having a webinar with our wonderful Dr. Constance Dziombak, who is a TESOL expert, and today she will be talking about content-based instruction. Just to mention about our speaker, so she has a 39 years experience in TESOL field. She has worked with all age groups and level of proficiency from kindergarten through university. She has taught various graduate TESOL education courses and workshops both in the US and internationally in China, Cambodia, Poland, Belarus, Indonesia, Russia, and Japan. She was the US Department of State English Language Specialist in Tajikistan during summer 2016, and she also have been in other countries. Currently, Dr. Dziombak is supervising students, teachers in the TESOL program at the Pace University School of Education in New York and facilitating educational seminars for the New York State Union of Teachers Educational Learning Trust. So Dr. Dziombak was president of New York State TESOL and an affiliate of TESOL International Association from 2009 to 2010. So welcome, Constance. We are happy to have you today. So the floor is given to you.
Thank you, Nasiba. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here this morning. It's my morning, but your afternoon. Thank you for coming. I know you probably had a long day, and I'm going to start my presentation on content-based instruction. Okay. Let's begin. Today's essential questions. These are the areas that we're going to cover today. What is content-based instruction? Why content-based instruction? What learning theory supports CBI? What are the general components of CBI? What are some language programs that include CBI? And what are the CALP and SIOP models? SIOP approaches to CBI. So these are the questions we will answer today. So what is CBI? It's an approach. It's not a methodology. It's an approach to developing language skills through academic subjects such as language arts, math, science, social studies, or through specific themes that are personal or professional interest to your students. There's a dual commitment to both language and content learning objectives. Why CBI? Because we learn through language, and through language we can demonstrate what we know. Content in CBI is relevant, authentic, and motivating to the learner. What educational theory supports CBI? The theories of communicative competence, social learning theory, the input hypothesis, and the idea of BICS versus CALP. We are going to visit those shortly. Here are some general principles of language acquisition. First of all, language is functional. It has a purpose, and the purposes vary. Languages vary from region to region, from register to register. Language is also cultural learning. It's a long-term process, and language skills develop interdependently. So we learn all 4 skills: listening, reading, writing, all simultaneously. They're interdependent. Native language proficiency, your literacy in your native or your home language, your first language, contributes to second language acquisition. Language acquisition occurs through meaningful use and interaction. It's in context. Delheims was a sociolinguist who thought that Chomsky's rule-governed competence was too limited. He believed that this rule-governed creativity didn't account for social and functional rules of language. He said that a communicative competence enables us to convey and interpret messages and to negotiate meanings interpersonally and within specific context. It's basically the ability to know when and how to use language. Now, Stephen Krashen, he is a well-known linguist and professor emeritus in California. One of his principles of language acquisition is comprehensible input. And basically, comprehensible input is I plus one, meaning input, any messages that we receive, spoken or written, plus one level above our level. So it's necessary of our language ability. It's necessary for language acquisition to occur. So in other words, we need our messages, our input, the I, should be slightly above the learner's current English language level. Let's see. Next, I think this is not my slide. Okay, next we have the zone of proximal development. Now, Lev Vygotsky, he came up with this theory. He was a sociolinguist, and he came up with the theory of the social theory of learning. And he says basically that our learning takes place not out of context, but with our interaction with other people. And we can learn best with the help of others. Now, the zone of proximal development shows here that we have what a learner can do. Let me get my pointer. Is this going to work? What we could do on our own, that's an independent learning, and then what we can do with our instructional help and what we can't do. There are three zones. And the zone of proximal development is the instructional area where I think this is the different PowerPoint, where we can gain new information with the help of others. So this is where teachers come in with instructional supports, with scaffolding. So you want to bring, like Krashen said, you want the input to be a little bit above what the learner can do so they can develop their skills, but you don't want it to go beyond that zone. So that's called the ZPD, or the zone of proximal development. Now, Jim Commons, he's another famous researcher and professor. He is known for his theory of BICS versus CALP. And BICS are the basic interpersonal communication skills, or social language, which is it's much quicker for us to learn the basic interpersonal communication skills. It's basically listening and speaking skills that we develop in everyday situations. It's what you would call our social language. It takes about 2 or 3 years to develop. It's kind of what our learners would be their school language when they come into an English-speaking environment and they need to develop their social language skills. It's much quicker than their cognitive academic language proficiency, which is the CALP. I'm thinking this is the different PowerPoint. That takes 7 to 10 years to develop. It's much longer, and it depends on the learner's background and their level of literacy in their native or their first language, the L1. Okay, so what are some programs that use CBI? Well, the first set of programs here, the bilingual ESL or EFL education programs in English for special purposes and immersion programs, the emphasis is more on developing the language skills of the learners, and content is a vehicle through which they develop those skills. But in these other programs, CLIL, Content and Language Integrated Instruction, and the adjunct program, there's the balance is more, it leans more toward the content area rather than the language. But all these programs have a dual purpose of developing language and content skills and knowledge. So what are some components of CBI? Well, we first have content and learning objectives. The fact that it integrates all 4 language modalities: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We use authentic materials. Academic language is key. We implement cooperative learning activities, and we encourage students to develop and use their critical thinking skills. And there's an emphasis on teaching and learning strategies. So teachers need to be knowledgeable of the subject matter. They need to maintain lesson context and comprehensibility, select and adapt authentic materials, provide scaffolding, and create a learner-centered classroom. So learning objectives are key to CBI. We have 2 types of objectives: content objectives, which tells what students will learn during the lesson, and the language objective, which indicates language skills which students will need to learn and use to reach the goals of the lesson and demonstrate. Oh, wow, I'm sorry, is there a way that I could skip to my other version? This is not the right version.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, because it doesn't, I don't know something. I'm sorry, I apologize. Let's see. Wait, do you see my screen now?
Now I can see, but okay, if you found it, it's okay, we can continue. Otherwise, I will be.
Okay, you see my screen now? It has noticed the keywords, content objective in green.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm sorry, back to our presentation. The content objective, so we see that in green, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so students will be able to, we call this in the United States, we call that SWABOT. So students will be able to identify and describe the 4 levels of the Amazon rainforest. Those are our content objectives. The language objectives are that students will be able to read about the Amazon rainforest, then they will complete a graphic organizer with the name and description of each level and the names of the animals which live on each level. They will learn the meaning of the following vocabulary: emergent layer, canopy, understory, forest floor, bat, dart frog, spider monkey, sloth, toucan, snake, crowned eagle, king colobus, monkey. So the content objectives are being able to identify and describe the levels of the Amazon rainforest and the animals. The language objectives are to read about the Amazon rainforest, complete a graphic organizer, and learn the meaning of new vocabulary. So now we have a sample of a SIOP, which we will learn about that shortly. Lesson plan. Nocturnal versus diurnal animals. Animals that live, that move about in the night, and those that live about in the daytime. So let's take a look at the content and objectives. So students will identify adaptations that help animals navigate in daytime and nighttime environments. Students will sort different animals that are either diurnal or nocturnal. So these are the content objectives, what they're going to learn about nocturnal and diurnal animals. Language objectives, on the other hand, the students will be able to discuss the differences between the animals that are active during the day and animals that are active at night, and they will write 1-sentence summaries. Students will read their summaries about nocturnal and diurnal animals. Students will apply orally and in writing new vocabulary words. So the language objectives will include a variety of skills: discussion, speaking skills, writing skills, and reading skills. and development of vocabulary. Here is a list of what we call some authentic materials. Take a look. And remember, it's important to use authentic materials in content-based instruction, but in not only content-based instruction, but all of our activities. So why cooperative learning? Why should we have working together as an important component? Because it requires students to interact and rely on others and themselves to accomplish a task. It provides opportunities for real communication. Students share information, help each other, and clarify and negotiate meaning. It lowers anxiety, increases self-esteem. Motivating activities promote intrinsic motivation. So why critical thinking skills? Well, here we have the revised version of Bloom's taxonomy, which illustrates the different levels of thinking from more, let's see, as we climb up the pyramid, it's from less cognitively demanding activities to more cognitively demanding activities, which require more critical thinking. Here's a chart with Bloom's 6 original categories. Besides each category, there are vocabulary words, verbs, and question frames, which can be used in lessons to stimulate students' critical thinking skills. So we have the 6 categories. We have different verbs for activities, and we have question sentence frames. So communicative learning activities require critical thinking skills so students can investigate, evaluate, and problem solve. Critical thinking skills are required in university studies and professional and other real-life situations. Authentic texts include writers, speakers, facts, and opinions which students need to analyze to comprehend meaning and express their own response based on evidence. And especially now with a lot of information on the internet, it's important that they have the critical skills to determine what is fact and what is opinion. So also the aspect of whole brain learning. We all possess a number of what Howard Gardner calls multiple intelligences, and here they are. Some people have more musical intelligence and respond to those kinds of activities. Some have more linguistic intelligences, or spatial or bodily, kinesthetic intelligences, but we all possess many intelligences. And the more that we use these different intelligences, the more we use our brain, and the more we're using our whole brain, since these intelligences are stimulated in different parts of our brains. So when we use our whole brain, the more our neurons connect to each other, and the stronger the connections are, and the better we learn and retain information. Now, we're coming up to a point where you've had a lot of information, and I would like to know, like, how are you feeling now? You should be getting a poll now, I think, if we have that up. And I'd like you to choose a letter in the poll which describes how you're feeling now. Are you feeling great? Now you can be honest. Are you feeling sleepy, or are you feeling confused? I hope not. So why don't you take a minute, and why don't you tell us, are you feeling A, B, or C? Which describes you now? So you just click on either A, B, or C. How are you feeling? Do we have the results of the poll? Are we able to? Maybe not. Okay, well, I hope everybody's feeling great, but you might be feeling a little sleepy because it's been a long day. But I hope you're not confused. And if you're confused, just don't hesitate to ask some questions afterwards.
Constance, we
Yes.
have a very high percentage of people who responded as great.
Oh,
so
great.
Great. 93% responded great, and only 7% sleepy. And I assume that's because of the end of the working day.
Oh, good. I hope you're not confused with the technical difficulties. Okay,
Happens. It's okay. It happens.
Yeah, okay. This would make me very nervous, and then I was, my explanations, I hope were clear enough for you.
Yeah.
Academic language, that's the cornerstone of content-based instruction. So let's take a look at that. That's very, as I said, that's the base. So here we have situations of social language being used. Remember the BICS? So you can read through those. So listening to your choir teacher give you the practice schedule, reading a dinner menu, writing a post on Facebook, having a conversation with your friends about their travel plans. Those are all situations where you would be developing your BICS, your social language. On the other hand, we have the academic language. Remember, that takes longer for us to develop, for our students to develop, for us to develop when we're language learners and our students, because we are often can be find ourselves defining a scientific term, comparing and contrasting two forms of alternative energy. Maybe in a science class, we could be summarizing information in a research paper, or explaining how to solve a complex math problem. So you see the situations in which we are developing BICS and CALP are totally different. And the demands, the cognitive demands and linguistic demands are very different. So what makes academic language difficulty? First of all, it's context reduced, so there are fewer clues to meaning. Second of all, it uses very specific vocabulary that we don't use in our social language, our BICS. There are complex sentence structures. There are various rhetorical styles. For example, compare, contrast, persuasive, etc. And it's more cognitively demanding. It requires higher order thinking skills. Remember the pyramid, Bloom's pyramid, the base from knowledge to creativity. The structure of academic, in this structure there are basically three levels. One is the word level, two, the sentence level, and the discourse level. Here we have the word level. Vocabulary is tiered. We talk about, let's see, let me get my pointer. We talk about, get to the pointer, okay, laser pointer. Tier 1 words are high frequency, basic, everyday words. In tier 2, we have high utility or highly useful words that we commonly see in academic content areas. We see them in science, we see them in math, we see them in language arts classes. Tier 3, on the other hand, are low frequency, domain specific words, meaning they're specific to the subject matter. So there are 3 tiers, and as you see, as we go up the pyramid, you see that they are less frequently used in academic situations, the tier 3 words. So here we have some examples of academic vocabulary. Basic words related to everyday situations, such as book, house, eat, run. We've got tier 2, which are general academic words. They're not a part of everyday language. And we can find them across subject areas, across the curriculum, such as discuss, analyze.
Dear participants, apologies, just we lost Constance.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Oh my goodness. A lot of technical difficulties today. Okay, so I don't know if you heard this part. We now have a poll for you, and there you will see different vocabulary words, and you will decide whether they are tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 words. So you select what you think, which tier you think the word belongs in, tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. So if you just take a few seconds to complete that poll, would be great.
Yeah, so right now the participants are going to participate in the poll. And
Okay, great.
We'll learn about the results. So
okay,
please,
wonderful.
Yeah, please, dear participants, make your choices and we'll see the results.
Great.
Okay, now we can see the results. So about 100% of participants have chosen both, oxidize, and the rest have chosen about, okay, just a moment. Yeah, it started over again. Now we can see the proper results.
Okay.
Okay, because people are still making their choices.
Okay, great. You don't want to give away the answers yet.
Yeah. Let's wait. Some seconds and we'll see the results.
Make this cognitively challenging.
Yeah. Okay, now so we have the results.
Okay.
80% have chosen both. 60% have chosen analyze. And so the rest have chosen computer, define, trapezoid, however, conclude, and molecules. They make about 40%. So the majority have chosen both.
Okay, and here, can you see on the screen now? Hopefully I'm sharing this proper screen.
Yeah.
High frequency basic words, computer, and both. Tier 1.
Okay.
High utility academic.
Yeah.
Tier 2. Analyze, define, conclude, and however. We see those words across all content areas. Not just math, not just science or history. And low frequency domain specific words, tier 3, molecule, trapezoid, oxidize. Molecule we'd find in chemistry, trapezoid, in math, oxidize, and chemistry as well. So those are some tier 1, tier 2, and 3 vocabulary words. Okay, let's move on to some polysemous words. Now, another thing that makes academic language challenging is that there are polysemous words. They're words that are spelled and pronounced the same, but they have a different meaning in different contexts or content areas. So let's see what we have here. We get my pointer. So we have, pointer didn't go, okay, laser pointer. Okay, we have the word table. It could be a lunch table, that's everyday language, or it could be a periodic table in science, or a table of contents in ELA or English Language Arts. We could be referring to multiplication tables in math. We have the word plot. Could be a plot of a story in English Language Arts, a plot of land in geography, or a plot in mathematics, a plot ordered pairs or on a graph. Or it could be in history, to plot a government coup, to plan, right? Plot. So various meanings. Branch, everyday language is a tree branch. In social studies, it could be a branch of the government, or in geography, it could be a branch of a river. So the same words, sounding the same, spelled the same, have different meanings or connotations in different content areas. Okay, now we have the discourse level. In discourse, so we had the word level, sentence level. Wait a second, what happened to sentence level? Okay, wait, something happened here. Wait, Polysemous words. Okay, we have the vocabulary. Now we have the discourse level. And that is language beyond the sentence in text and conversation. So it contains, discourse contains grammar and syntax. We have the conditional structures, which are often challenging to the learner. We have comparisons, which are complex. We have relative clauses. So the grammar and syntax is part of the discourse level of academic language. There's also the organization and functions of discourse. It's the structure and purpose of a debate, a persuasive essay, an explanation of a mathematical equation, a science lab report, etc. We also have discourse connectors for sequencing. In other words, first, next, those connectors, which convey relationships between ideas, however, since, moreover, etc. So here we have some teaching and learning strategies. Teaching strategies are approaches and activities and assignments which help students understand and learn. Scaffolding provides comprehensible input. Remember, Krashen's input should be input plus 1. In other words, a little bit above the learner's comprehension so that they can develop their skills. And the scaffolding, like you see the scaffolding when we're building, constructing a building, supports the building and the worker. So our scaffolding provides our students with supports that help them build understanding of the content, that help them access content. So here is a chart of some scaffolding strategies using realia, hands-on activities, group paired work, modeling gestures, demonstrations, connecting content to the student's background knowledge, the use of the first language, L1, using sentence starters, multimedia, visuals, graphic organizers. These are all examples of scaffolding strategies. Learning strategies are techniques that help students understand, retain, and apply information. There are metacognitive strategies, which is thinking about your own learning, involving organizing, planning, self-monitoring, and self-evaluation. Some examples of this are homework, using a homework notebook, setting deadlines, and studying. Cognitive strategies involve practice and promote deeper understanding, retention, and application of new knowledge. So some examples are highlighting important information while you're reading, taking notes, creating graphic organizers. Next, we have social affective strategies, which are working with one or more students. Examples are working in pairs or groups, doing homework with a friend, asking questions and making requests in class and outside of class. And memory. Memory is another strategy, using mnemonics to learn, which aids recitation of learned material. So, for example, there's a little song that kids learn in the US, 30 days hath September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except for February, which has 28, except on leap year, when it has 29. So that's how, when you want to think about, oh, how many days do I have in this month? You go through that little song in your head. And then there's also a spelling trick, I before E except after C. Those are things that I've learned. So they're mnemonics that help us just recite and memorize information. So what are the CALP and SIOP approaches? CALP, which is the cognitive academic language approach, and SIOP, which is the sheltered instruction observation protocol. These are two approaches of CBI. They're very well known and very well used. So CALP has metacognitive and task-based strategies, which we've just reviewed. So the metacognitive skills are used for learning, monitoring, and identifying problems, evaluating progress, and managing learning conditions. Task-based are cognitive, social, and affective strategies, which are determined by the specific task. So in the CALP method or approach, there's emphasis on teaching students very explicitly on how to use these strategies. Here are the 5 phases of CALP. Preparation, where you elicit the student's background knowledge. Presentation, where you're presenting new information and skills, and you're making them, it's important, you're making them accessible. You're making the new information accessible and comprehensible. Remember the scaffolding techniques. And practice, where the students use the new information and skills. And self-evaluation, where students assess their own understanding of the content. Expansion, finally, where the students engage in activities that apply to what they have learned in their own lives. Makes it more meaningful and more authentic for them. Here, now, I guess because we're running low on time, here you can look back at the presentation, and here's an example of CALP instructional guidelines, and you'll see there's a space for content objectives and language objectives and the strategies. And here, the materials, and here we see the 5 steps: preparation, presentation, practice, self-evaluation, and expansion, with some explanation. Again, some questions to direct you in designing your lesson. Okay, SIOP model is the next popular model. It's a lesson planning and delivery system. There are 8 components of SIOP. 1 is lesson preparation, where we write content and language objectives, determine the content concepts, gather supplementary materials, adapt content, and design meaningful activities. Next is building background. You're linking the concepts of the content, what you're trying to teach, to the students' backgrounds. It's very important. Link their past learning and their new learning. New information with old information. Develop key vocabulary. And comprehensible input. You use the appropriate speech. You explain tasks clearly. You use a variety of techniques, and remember scaffolding. Strategies. You employ cognitive, metacognitive, language learning, scaffolding techniques, and critical thinking questions and tasks. Interaction. Make sure that there are frequent chances for teacher-student interaction, student-student interaction in the classroom. Your grouping configurations. Think about how you want the activities which would be suitable for paired or group work. Make sure you have sufficient wait time before eliciting a student's response. And make sure that you clarify any complex concepts in L1, the first language, the native language. It's fine to do that, especially with beginning learners. Practice and application. Hands-on practice with new knowledge. Apply content and language skills in new ways. You integrate all 4 language skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Lesson delivery. You support content and language objectives during the lesson. You promote student engagement, and you pace lessons appropriately. And finally, review and assessment. Review the lesson objectives, key vocabulary, key content concepts, and you assess the lesson objectives. You give regular feedback to the students. You assess student comprehension of objectives. Here's an example of a SIOP lesson template. The theme standards. Now, I actually in the beginning, when I was talking about content objectives and language objectives, they're usually designed based on the either local or federal state standards in the US. So you would look at your schools or your program standards, and then you would design your objectives based on those standards. So we have language objectives, content objectives, the learning strategy, key vocabulary, materials, and then we have the 5 components of the SIOP model. Okay, and I think that concludes the presentation, my presentation. And I welcome any questions you may have, especially about if there are any questions about the first part of the presentation, since there were some technical difficulties. Hopefully the information was clear to you. If not, please don't feel shy about asking some questions.
So, and on behalf of the whole participant list today, and of course of the on behalf of the English Without Borders team, once again, we express our deep gratitude to you, Dr. Constance, for your participation and for your joining our English Without Borders webinars. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.
Yeah, you too. And